Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Tuesday night in the spotlight. Tonight, I have joining me Megan Burnside, and she's here to talk to us tonight about following the spark of inspiration into a magical and epic life. Megan is a past life regression practitioner, a ceremonial drum maker, artist, and energy worker who specializes in helping people to create new future realities. Her greatest desire is to help people clear old patterns and beliefs that get in the way of limitless creation and to experience limitless possibilities herself. She has been a student of many indigenous shaman and wisdom keepers all over the world and is excited for the new chapter of humanity that is opening up right now that our ancestors foresaw. She currently resides in Bozeman, Montana until spirit guides her elsewhere. If anyone's wanting to connect with Megan, you can find her on Facebook at Megan Burnside, drum artist. And I'll have that link in the comments for you guys as well. So welcome, Megan, and thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Thank you. Good to
So
be
can you
here.
tell me, what is this spark that you're talking about?
So probably a lot of people already have experienced this in your circles, the people that you know and that listen to you, but it's that feeling like that excitement that
Can you tell
is
me, what
leading,
is
like
it?
that soul pull that's guiding you into something that's like um further into your own path and your own the unfolding of your purpose and yourself really. And so I've just been kind of experimenting with this and really trusting in it, and almost like a similar concept is Mickey Singer's what was the name of his book, The Surrender Experiment, where
Okay, yeah.
he talks about how he just surrenders, and it's kind of more surrenders to what's happening. For me, it's more of like that feeling that I have started to identify as the spark of inspiration. It's almost like your soul like pulling you forward or nudging you forward. Um, so there's I just got on TikTok. I'm actually loving the spiritual side of TikTok, but there was a man that I heard of who I wish I could remember his name, but he talked about the luckiest man he ever knew. And he worked with this man, but he was seen to be very lucky and very successful. And he watched him and noticed that this man, the reason why he was lucky and the reason why he was successful was because whenever coincidences happened, he changed his plan to follow those coincidences. So whenever something came up and it was like, wow, that's crazy, he would follow it, um, and for me, it's sometimes it's coincidences, but it's more often like that spark of like pay attention, and it just like something sticks out to me um, really strongly. And a lot of times there are coincidences, like I was telling you beforehand. But yeah, things that pop up that is just like this is like guiding you towards that next thing, and there's this spark, this accompanying feeling that happens with it. So anyway, I guess that's the best way I can describe it. But I know that those of you who are watching know what I'm talking about. But
Yes.
and I've also noticed that it actually is accompanied with fear. Fear is almost always present because when you're being pulled into your soul path or deeper into like learning about yourself and your potential and what you can bring to the world and getting to know yourself better so you can bring it out to the world better. Like I call that your soul path or whatever. Um, there's always a stretching, like a taking you beyond what you thought you were capable of or what was possible for you, your limitations, and so the fear is the guardian, is the fear is what has kept you where you are, and so you're always going to feel fear in order to move into something new. So I've also had to like really gauge what is fear and what is like a warning, like that's different.
So what have you found to be different then between the fear and the warning? Like when you're getting that spark or you're having those coincidences, what would you say, oh, that's my fear, or oh, that's a warning?
um so I always look for what's pulling me forward. So there's always like a spark of excitement. And then it's a lot of times accompanied by a like, whoa, I don't even know if that's possible. Or I mean, even like on this trip I'm on right now, I'm in Casper, Wyoming. I'm on my way to Colorado to follow a spark of intuition. And we'll see how that unfolds. But even on the way, like I have my family with me, and we rented a van. And then I just like, I had so much fear come up about like the roads, and it's winter, and like I'm taking all of my kids out, and it's like, I mean, there's just a lot. My husband has a job in Colorado, and so he needed to go to Colorado anyway. And so we thought we'd come along, and then we saw a lot of signs that said, yes, go along. A lot of those intuitive sparks, but I felt a lot of fear, and I felt a lot of like, just like, I don't know, trauma from the past come up. I've had traumatic experiences that keep me safe and keep me small. And so when I'm looking to expand, the fears will always come up. So I knew it was just my fears coming up. So I allowed myself to cry. I allowed myself to get really scared. I just felt it big, like feel it big so I can feel it out, so that my life isn't ruled or run by that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Actually, the week that we met, before leaving on that trip, I was actually writing out my will, as well as like my Facebook password, my website passwords. This is what you do if you get an order for any of my products or whatever, and like leaving it for my family, because I was leaving them to go away for
Yeah.
a week. And I thought for sure I was going to die. And it was
Yeah.
all of these old stories that were about to die, but they all just kind of came up, and they're like, yeah, no, your plane's about to crash, you know,
I
and
totally had
you keep
that.
following that spark and going, for whatever reason, I'm drawn to do this, but there's this part of me that really thinks I'm about to die.
Yeah. Yeah. That's totally, I've had that too. Yeah. And so it's usually like a quickening. I call it like a quickening, like an excitement. And then it's almost like, oh, but I can't. So that's how I know that that's like, yeah, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do in order to break out of the place that you think is what you're capable of.
Yeah, yeah. So what have, like, when you followed the spark, I know right now you're on this journey of actually following a spark, but is there other times that you followed a spark having no idea what was coming next, only to be like gifted with like unexpected results, I guess, if that's what we can call them?
Yes. And sometimes it's been crazy. Like people think I'm crazy, right? Like the sparks don't always make sense. And to other people's like life plan or what they feel is safe and whatever, they might be like, what are you doing? So I had like, it's kind of a long story. So I'm actually gonna like, there's a long, like a longer story to this, but I'm just gonna say that while I was in Jamaica on a job, my husband and I had been hired to do we met in film school, so we both have video background. So we were hired to do a video in Jamaica with all these like millionaires. It was cool. Anyway, so we're out there, and I had recently had a tragedy, and I had lost a son, and so I was still processing all my grief, and actually a lot of that came out while I was in Jamaica. And then I remember sitting out in this gazebo. It was 1 a.m. after we had been filming, and I was like really having a lot of grief come up. My husband was sitting next to me, and just looking out in the dark. It's like pitch black out in Jamaica. There's like nothing out there beyond the surf. And I just remember being like, I'm willing to give everything up. Like I'm willing to give up everything to follow my path. And I just gave up everything up there. And when we got home, I had that spark, that thing that said, I think we need to get rid of everything, like everything. And my husband took a little bit more time to get on board, but he actually got his own answer, his own like um, affirmation on that. And so we got rid of all of our things. We started selling it, but then it was just taking too long. So we started giving things away, and we sold our house. And I remember my mom coming down and just like, just being afraid at me. It was just like fear, but what about this? But what about this? And I was packing, and I just like had to allow, that was like, she was my fear, like threshold guardian. She got to be the one that was the voice of all the things that I was already thinking. And we actually got rid of all of our things, and we traveled, and I had like huge spirit. It was like the beginning of my spiritual awakening. That was the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And so I can't even like quantify how different my life is. And of course we then, we traveled, we've rented several places, we bought a house again. And then, it sounds like we've like been all over the place, but it's been perfect every time. It's been like a new life every time, which in our lifetime here, we are doing the work of several lifetimes. So we will have different like lifetimes that we live here. So anyway, that was a few lifetimes ago. But the other thing is, so recently, well, we sold our house in Eagle Mountain, and we knew we wanted to live close to like woods. And I had in mind, you know what, I'm gonna like, it's got to be like Oregon or Washington, you know? And so we drove up, and I waited for that spark. Like I waited for that divine spark. We drove up through Oregon and Washington, and we stayed these different places. Also, my husband's work said, yeah, you can work remotely, no problem. But then they changed their mind after we sold our house. And so sometimes it's messy, like in the middle. Like I know we felt like this was the right path, but and then all of a sudden, like it looks like things are not working out. Like I thought my compass was broken because none of those places felt right. And then we went through Coeur d'Alene and Idaho. We came back through Montana. And then when we hit Montana, it was like, this is it, like where we are now in Bozeman. This is it. And I realized that my compass wasn't broken. It's just that the divine spark was waiting until we were in the right place, you know? And so now we're in the right place. But my husband's work said, sorry, you can't work remotely. We need you here. And then COVID hit, and everybody was working remotely, and it didn't matter where anybody was. And so we were like in the middle of like following, instead of canceling and going back, we just followed it. And it's crazy how it worked out. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That was
Absolutely.
like a lot of stories in one like breath.
But I think it's fantastic because I think people need to know that just because you follow the spark doesn't mean it's just going to work out perfectly.
Yeah.
Just because you follow the spark, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have these fears that come up. And just because you follow the spark doesn't mean that it's going to like happen like this, and the spark changes. I think that's one of my most annoying things about the spark is like, okay, this is perfect for right now. And then you get settled and you're like, okay, this is comfortable. And then the next thing you know, that spark has changed again. And you're like, okay, new direction.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's crazy, like, you know, yeah, from the outside and even from the inside at points where like, was this a bad idea? Did I like mishear that, you know? And it's just really an exercise in trust. And also we think we know what it means. Like the spark means this is where you're going to stay. You're going to like raise your grandchildren here. You know, that's not necessarily it at all. In fact, you may need to just be there to meet one person. There's man, one of our spark trips, we went all the way out to Tennessee, and we actually thought we were going to move there. But we went all the way up to Tennessee and met one person. Like I swear this trip was just for us to meet this one person. You know, it's crazy. And they were trying to figure out their next steps, and they were thinking of traveling. And I said, you have to listen to this podcast. There's this podcast called the Traveling Family Podcast, or the Family Adventure. I think it's the Family Adventure Podcast. But anyway, it's a podcast just of families that travel. That's all they do. You know, they this guy like interviews families that they RV around the country, or they backpack across Europe, or they bicycle from, you know, like Alaska to, you know, Mexico or whatever. Like there's all these stories of families that travel. And so I said, you have to listen to this. And so they listened to this, you know, podcast, and they totally changed their life. They rented out their place, they RV, like they started this big, like for those of you who have done this, you've probably heard of these people because they are now like, you know, they have their own podcast and they have their own like, you know, materials. Anyway, I'm like, I did that, you know, but I didn't. Like spirit sent us out, and I swear, like we helped trigger the next part of their journey, you know? And so it wasn't even for us. We didn't even end up moving to Tennessee, but I'm like really proud of that trip because I feel like we did it and we were the messengers right where it needed, you know, just right at the right time for them. So.
Absolutely. And have you ever seen the movie? I think it's called The Star. It's a Christmas movie based on the Christmas story, but it's like the story of the donkey and all of the other like side characters. So we always hear about like Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus, but this is like the story of the donkey that took them to Bethlehem, and all of the different characters that had to be kind of behind the scenes. Even though Jesus was like the main character, it was all of these other people behind the scenes that helped Jesus come to the world or whatever. And it's such a great story because they were the real heroes, you know, even though it's a fictional story. But sometimes we forget that we can actually just be the hero by following the spark, just being at that right place at the right time and saying the right words at the right time.
Yeah, because really, like, I mean, like this whole thing that's happening, like, I don't know how to even say it. Like, I don't know, you want to call it like the ascension, or like how much we're expanding and growing as humanity, you know? It's like each one of us is just a like a wave in the whole ocean. So like when we, I don't know, it's just like everything we can do to help someone else is actually making the world a better place for us and helping us fulfill our dreams. And like it all just we're all just going like this all together, you know?
Yes, yes. And for a lot of people too, being the person who's willing to receive the help that someone else is able to give them is a huge thing, because so often we're like, I got to do this, I got to do this.
Right.
But no, sometimes that can be the greatest gift that we can give to someone else, is to actually receive the help that they're offering.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
awesome. I would love to hear some more of your following this spark of intuition. I know I had a session with you a few weeks ago, and for the life of me, I can't even actually remember what the session was called. So,
It's called an SRT. So I do SRT, which is a type of, it's a modality. Yeah.
yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit more, tell the audience a little bit more about that? Because for myself, it actually helped me to align with my own spark that was coming up, but I was like too foggy in here, had too much other stuff in here to be able
Yeah.
to actually align with that spark.
Yeah. And that actually brings up another point that I wanted to make, is how important it is for us to know what we want. Like a lot of times our desires are equated with like, I don't know, like desire sounds bad, like especially if you're from like a religious background or whatever. Like we're not supposed to want something. If we want something, it's selfish, you know, and all that kind of underlying beliefs. And so what I do in the SRT sessions is I help somebody get really clear on what they want. And I think that the divine spark is closely associated with what we want. And we get to, I think our soul already knows what our, like what we're here to experience. And so it comes in the form of desires, but then our small mindedness, or like our ego, or like our, what, you know, just short-sighted, we're like, so that means it has to be this, or it has to look like that. And so that's when we sometimes like want something and then we get disappointed. But if you go underneath what the physical want is, to the deeper longing, like that is part of our soul, like is part of our soul's path. And that is what like the divine spark works around, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, in my sessions I help people get really clear on what it is they want, and I ask questions to kind of get underneath it, because some people might be like, I want to move to New York City. And like, well, what exactly about that do you want? You know, like, well, I want to live in a community that's like this, and I want these kinds of friends, and I want to experience and feel this type of thing. So we get really clear on what somebody wants. And if I stop there, like that would be so helpful just there, you know? Just helping somebody get clear is really helpful. But then what we do after that is I use a pendulum, and I have about 200 charts, and I go through to clear whatever energies. And I use the help of, I mean, I use helpers. So it's not actually me clearing, I bring in helpers. But we clear whatever it is that is kind of like you're holding on to, any energies, any patterns or programs that you're holding on to, kind of like that. Well, I'm not allowed to want things because it's bad, or it's selfish, or whatever, like that kind of stuff. We don't even realize we have it subconscious, you know? And so clearing those things out can help us like really um, have that trajectory towards what we want. And also being really open to what that looks like, but knowing what the deeper desire is, it can be really clarifying. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I love doing that session with you. It was so great.
Yes, it was. It was because for myself, it was bringing a lot of clarity to things where I was like letting go of things that I was like, well, I used to want this though. So how can I
Mhm.
not want this anymore? But understanding too, because from the first session to the second session, because I know we had done kind of like a two-piece session, it was amazing the amount of clarity that ended up coming through that. And for me to be able to just vocalize, oh, this is what it is. Like it was almost, I don't know, there was again that kind of block
Yeah.
or whatever that was there going, I don't know how to dig deeper into this, but you
Mhm.
were able to help clear that and kind of give that better vision or clearer vision to what it was that my soul was saying to me. I just wasn't ready to listen to it at the time.
And I loved I mean, I can't take like credit, but like I see so many people after the session, um, just like move like things move. It's almost so quickly. Like you finished your book. I just had this other woman that just told me yesterday she had been looking at this like 40 acres retreat property, and it's what she really wanted. And it's freaking February. I just had the session with her, and it was like her year goal was to be able to somehow, accomplish this. February, she has bought that property. She's been able, she didn't have the money. I don't even know. I have to find out the story from her, but I know we did a session about this property. And yesterday I saw that she freaking bought it. And then she's like, I have to tell you the story. So I haven't heard it yet. But it's crazy how fast when we move all of those blocks or those subconscious things that are working against us, that are blocking us, we can manifest so quickly, and we can like change our lives and create our future so quickly. So that's why in my bio, I talk about like we're actually we're unlimited, we're limitless, especially in this new phase of, I don't know, whatever the ascension, I don't know what is going on, but things are happening super fast right now. We're like at the beginning of like so many possibilities. I think like, I don't know, I just see it as just like we're just in this place where there are open doors, and the only thing that's coming between us and those open doors are those things that we're telling ourselves, our own limitations, our own beliefs, so.
Absolutely. Now, knowing that you work with a lot of different people on all of these limiting beliefs and blocks and stuff, what do you see as being kind of the common thread for people? Or do you see a lot of patterns that come up for people?
I see a lot of actually, call it like self-sabotage, or there's like some kind of guilt that they feel, and it could be from this life or past life. But if and it could be just what you were taught, and actually a DNA. So it can come from a lot of places. But I sometimes people don't actually feel worthy, like they are not a good enough person to have what they want.
Mm.
And so I don't know, like a lot of people kind of have this like I didn't deserve it, or I didn't earn it. Almost like I think a lot of that maybe is religiously connected. Um, but the truth is, like, this lifetime is like, we get to, I don't, it's like a piece of paper that we get to create something on, and we get to like try this and then try that and try this crayon and that crayon. So a lot of people are like, what crayon should I use? What is my, like, what do I, and all you have to do is like, you can try whatever crayon you want. It doesn't matter. It's not good or bad or right or wrong. But then sometimes when you start going on your soul path and you're like, ooh, I'm here, I really want to learn how to paint this thing or color this, whatever. I don't know. Maybe this analogy falls apart at some point.
I think it's a great analogy.
Yeah. And then you're like, this is what I'd really love to do. And then there's helpers and guides that will come in and be like, yeah, you try this, try that, let's teach you this skill. Let's teach you that skill. And so you can create the artwork that you would really love to create, And so if somebody thought like, I don't deserve to create what I want, like feeling like this deserving thing, that comes up a lot. So clearing that and realizing like, you're here to experience whatever the hell you want to, like you get to experience what you want to. Let's see, what else comes up a lot. A lot of people don't know what they want. Like a lot of people don't know how to dream. So that's also kind of discouraging. And that's why some people's session is all just like kind of, what would be fun, what would be exciting, what would be joyful, what brings you joy now. They don't even, like, a lot of people are so in a place of like trying to survive, like survival, that they can't even look at what is beautiful or inspiring or exciting. And if you aren't even open to that, you cannot hear the divine spark, or unless they hit you over the head, which hopefully, like that's what you need and that gets you out of it. But yeah, definitely like allowing yourself to dream and allowing yourself to find what is joyful. Like this divine spark thing is also closely tied to artistic, like being artistic, like allowing it to flow, like even just, like even if you don't think you're artistic at all, just like trying stuff and, splattering paint, using crayons, doing stuff like that, writing things, singing some songs, whatever, like that's actually more what life is like than what we think it's like, which is like doing it right or doing it wrong, or having to deserve, or having to earn, or having to produce enough so that you can get what you want, like, I don't know.
Absolutely. These are all of the old stories.
Right.
That I feel maybe it was our parents, maybe it was our grandparents. So it's like, there's no one to blame for it. It's just, this is the way it was for so long. And
Mm-hmm.
to follow something like the art, or to follow that creative spark, or to sell everything off and just go traveling, like that is not what they were taught, you know? And so it is a very scary kind of scenario for that. And I, even as you were saying that, I'm like, well, I've thought quite a few times now to just sell everything and just, my big thing is to go on the Camino. And I'm like,
I
let's just
know, I
sell
love that.
everything now. Let's just go, and then we'll like figure it out when we get back or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And so I totally understand that, but I also understand the fears that are very closely connected to that. Now, I know you have a lot of kids at home,
Mm-hmm.
and what I see from what you've posted on Facebook and stuff, a lot of them are very artistic and very like exploring all these different creativities and stuff. So it's something that you've really instilled in them. But I would wonder, for people who maybe haven't had that creativity that's been given to them by their parents, what kind of encouragement or what kind of words would you say to them? Is it just to get started with it, or?
Yeah, find something that like, I don't know, that you're drawn toward. I mean, maybe you've always wanted to like, I don't know, use, watercolors or like getting in the right. So the right brain is the side that we dream, that we think up, like we actually create our futures from the right brain, unless we're living in our left brain, and then we create the same loops and cycles and scarcity. But if you really want to break out of the wheel, the old like day to day, this is my life forever, and this is how it's going to be because this is what we're told it's always going to have to be. If you want to get out of that space, then using your right brain is what's going to get you out of that. So so trying something, experimenting. You even have to like change your frame of mind of like, I'm not gonna like, this is not so that I can get rich selling prints of my artwork. I'm not doing this to impress people. I'm not doing this to become the best, to win or whatever, to win the competition. Like, I mean, and all of that can be fun, but when you're coming at it from a place of experimenting, from dreaming, from practicing seeing something in your head and putting it on paper and noticing how it's like totally different than you thought, and that's okay because it's still cool. Like I'm an artist also,
Yes.
and almost every time I have like an idea of what it's going to look like, and I get it down there, for a while I think I am the worst art. I have forgotten how to do art. Like every time in the process I think I forgot how to do this, and then I keep going, and then it gets better, and then it looks totally different than I thought it was going to, but it looks cool. I get it to a point where I like it again, and so I'm noticing that if this is my process in art, this art is life, life is art. And so this is actually how my process is in creating, which is I needed to say that because I needed to hear that. I might just be in the stage right now where I don't think that I created something very good. And so I just need to keep going, I think. So that's really interesting. I'm really glad that well done, well played. Um,
And honestly, it kind of goes back to that divine spark, where sometimes you can have that spark and then you start to follow, and it's like, well, this is
yeah,
so messy. This is not what I was expecting.
like, why did you tell me to do this?
Yeah. And then the end up project that you end up with is always perfect, right? So,
Yeah.
and
And
I see
sometimes,
your artwork, like it's incredible. Incredible.
thank you.
You're welcome. So to just say to everybody, like, if you head on over to her Facebook page, you'll see her art. And I'm just like, I can't imagine that you would ever look at it and go, this is no good. Because what it ends up to be, I'm like, wow, it's stunning. Absolutely stunning.
Thank you. Yeah, the last one that I posted is still in that stage for me. Like I'm still like, I don't know how to fix this, but I sometimes it has to hang on my wall for like a couple months before I can figure, I don't know, before it comes to me what is the next stage. So that's probably more life lessons, but and then almost always it comes out better than I even expected. But
Yeah.
sometimes I've had to scrap it once in a while, but yeah, but I learn a lot, and so I think that like, using art to kind of get out of the mundane, out of survival and out of the trance. Like a lot of people just live in a trance of how they just like this is just life. This is just, how it's done. Getting out of that and realizing how this is a canvas. I get to paint whatever I want on this canvas. And as I'm moving towards that, all the blocks that kept me in that cycle are going to come up. They're going to come up, and so that I can clear that, so that I can create what I want to create.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, I know because you do a lot of past life regression work as well. So do you find when people are in this kind of caught up with the self-sabotage or with the thinking, I don't deserve this or whatever, do you find it tends to be more from this lifetime or previous lifetimes, or is it like a connection to both? Is it a generational thing? Or like, to me, it's all of them, but I'd love to hear your points of view on it.
It feels like, so I just watched this movie recently. What was it called? It had that guy that's on The Greatest Showman,
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman. So he's in this movie, and it has several lifetimes. He's living several lifetimes. And as he gets stuck in a past life, he's also stuck in the modern life. Like, it's a fascinating.
What is the movie called?
I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'll look it up and I'll let you know. I'll send it to you.
Cool.
You can tell your people. People know what I'm talking about. But anyway, the interesting thing about that is that, like,
they already said it's called The Fountain.
Okay, The Fountain, yeah. And so
okay.
that was kind of, and like, there's parallel lives, there's future lives. Like, it's not linear. Like, I don't know. I'm still, I don't completely understand it, but it's interesting how when he gets stuck in a past life, he gets stuck in a present life, and he's scared to move on. Like, he actually won't move forward. And he gets to this point where he's like, he just breaks down. He's like, I'm scared. And then he's also in this ascended state, and they're all paralleling each other. So I guess it's not a future, because it's more of a spiritual space. I don't know. Anyway, so we kind of like move and in all of these lifetimes, and time is linear or not linear. Time is really fluid, and we can change the past and we can change the future. Anyway, so basically, I don't know. To answer your question. Awesome. So yeah, it's from this life, and it's from past lives, and it's from future lives. And then when you change this life, you're changing past lives, you're changing future lives, and all parallel lives. So it all just shifts together.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
And don't ask me how it works, because I don't know.
That's okay. Some things I don't think we're meant to know. It's like solving the matrix or whatever. Like, some things we're here to experience, not to know all of the answers for. Otherwise, we'd be the computers that's figuring it out.
We actually wanted to experience it this way, or else, we would have chosen some other way. So yeah.
That's so true. So we do have one person that's asking, is it possible to heal past lives in this lifetime?
Oh, yeah.
And I think you've just answered that, but how would you guide people on healing their past lives?
I think that we, just like in that movie, how when he got stuck in the past, he got stuck in the present, and in whatever other realm it was, maybe parallel. But we can work, like, when we work through stuff in any lifetime, it's working through stuff in all lifetime. In fact, we're all probably working on stuff for each other, because we're a lot more connected than we realize. So when we do our inner work, it's like literally changing the world, and it's changing the history of our, it's doing a lot, just doing our own work. And so you can see Past Life Regression Practitioner, like a lot of, this is interesting, because I've done a lot of work with indigenous shaman, and there's like, I've done, plant medicine, and all, the sacred ceremonies, like in Peru and stuff. And what I've seen is what the shaman can do, and what a lot of people in our modern society who do not consider themselves shaman, who are, can do, and how they help is they connect us to, like, they're able to help us access where the underlying beliefs are held, in the subconscious, or in whatever you want to call it. And that's what plant medicine does. That's what hypnosis does, hypnotherapy. If you can find a really high vibrating hypnotherapist, they can really help you, with some of the stuff that is underlying, that came from the past life or this life or whatever. Sometimes it's just stuff that happens in our own lives that we subconsciously say, like, I have to protect myself from that ever happening again. And so therefore I will distrust men for the rest of my life. Like we make these promises that are underlying. We don't realize, like, now, like as an adult, I don't want to distrust men. I want to find trustworthy men or whatever, right? That's just an example. But so hypnotherapists can help with that. You know, people that do past life regression, they can help with that. Even somebody who just has an ability to hear what you're saying and hold space for you to process it. So there's a lot of people in the spiritual field that can help with that kind of thing. So yeah. And then like really, really trusted shaman and people who can hold space and who know what they're doing for plant medicine, I think that can be beneficial as well. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful. Um, yeah, I actually had a past life memory, and this is where I was like, it's so interesting. Um, because when I was a child growing up, I was deathly afraid of fire, deathly afraid. And I thought for sure I was going to die in a house fire. And then when I was in my early 20s, I did a past life regression. And in the past life regression, I watched myself die in a house fire. And I was like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense then, that I was always afraid of this. And then in my 30s, I found out that my great, great, great grandmother burnt to death in a house fire. And then I
wow.
went, so am I her reincarnated, or do I just carry the memory of that in the DNA? Like, what one is it? Or can they both just be
And
combined? And
both.
that's why I had to be born into this family, was to be able to experience and see both of those. So
Yeah.
to me, it's just
Well,
fascinating.
well, one thing is that, and this is something that I wrote on my Facebook post recently, is that because we are born from our mothers and our fathers genetic material, and that's passed down to our children and to their children, like literal genetic material that you have in your body was in that experience,
Yeah,
knew about it. I mean, epigenetics, like how baby mice are afraid of cherry blossoms because their parents, they were, anyway, there's
I
this
do. I'm
cherry
like
blossom.
so fascinated by this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. And they've done a lot of research with Holocaust survivors and the things that are passed down in their genes and their fears and their physical ailments and things that are specific to that group, that actually had that specific experience. So what we experience does get passed down, and the ancestors, they're very close to us. And one of the things that one of my shaman always said is, like thanking the ancestors for guiding us, because they are us, like, I don't know, just kind of like that. I don't know.
Yeah. And for myself, I feel like a lot of my sparks are actually so closely connected to my ancestors and what was a spark for them as well. And it
Yes.
almost seems in some ways that I'm following a truth that either they weren't able to finish, or that I'm bringing it even more forward for them to be able to experience it through me, if that makes.
Totally. In fact, I love that you said that. Like I'm taking an ancestral lineage healing course from Dr. Daniel Four, who is incredible. Highly
I just
recommend.
took 2 courses from him.
Oh, you did?
I did the animist psychology and the animist foundational ritual
Oh
course.
yeah. That's
So
awesome.
yeah,
I'm thinking of taking the ritual class. I'm taking the ancestral healing, but wait, now I have to remember. That's really cool that you did that. Isn't he a great teacher? Isn't he
he
so
is. He's
awesome?
like so calm and
Yeah.
so like,
Grounded.
yes, yes.
Oh yeah, he said that we actually uh are carrying on what our ancestors, like you said, like would have or started or set the foundation for, but like we're actually carrying on our ancestors soul path, or I don't know how you want to say it, but I think that's so fascinating, especially looking back at my ancestors. Like, what is this, what are we all doing together, what are we creating together,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's exciting. And it's also interesting because we've had so much trauma. When you have a lot of trauma that's unprocessed, which we know our generations have had because they inflicted trauma on others. And when the bullies bully others, then they were bullied. Like it goes back.
Yeah.
I'm talking about colonization and things like that. But anyway, it's when there's so much trauma, it's really hard to follow your life path. You're just in survival, and that we've had many generations of that passed on. And so if you, I just love that you said that you can kind of see a little bit of that spark of kind of that thing that's been carried on from your ancestors, because I'm looking and I'm like, you know, it's hard when you're in trauma. It's like so important to clear that stuff for ourselves and for our generations past and our generations, to the future, because
Yeah.
we're carrying on something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, one thing I guess you don't know about me is I do Ohana generational healing, which is actually clearing for the ancestors for
Oh,
the future children and stuff. Um, and it was a download that I received as an energy healing modality. And when I received the information, I was reading a book about inherited family trauma and stuff. And then, like, my guides were like, do this and do this and do this. And then they brought me the perfect client to give it a try on and whatever. Long story short, here we are like 4 years later, and it's like a modality now and whatnot. But when I was receiving the information, I heard you need to go back 15 generations. And I went, okay, I'll do 15 generations back. That's fine. And then about a year after I was working with the energies and stuff, one of my relatives said to me, I've got this like family ancestry book. Would you like it? Your great aunt wrote this and whatnot. And it says the story of your ancestors and whatnot. I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds great.
wow.
And it turned out that my grandmother's father, um, he witnessed his father passing from a fall, and then his son passed from a fall, both of them from barn rafters. And
Wow.
so after his son passed at the age of 21, he started to pray for his children and for his grandchildren, and he went up 15 generations.
Wow.
Yes. So then when I heard that, it was like this solidifying, he knew something and I knew something, but I feel like he helped me to know what it was that I needed to know. So he was working on the forward generations, and now I'm working on the backwards
How
generations.
forward thinking of him. I'm seriously getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah, I get goosebumps every time I tell the story because I didn't know the man at all, but I feel so deeply connected to him just from doing the ancestral work and stuff. And I think this is what maybe we all bypass or we've let go of this idea of connecting with the ancestors, connecting with who they were as people. A lot of times we talk about the traumas, the traumas,
Right.
the traumas,
Mhm.
but there's so many gifts. There's so much resiliency when we're dealing with this pandemic right now. They went through their own pandemics and they didn't even have social media the same way that we have social media. They were like, stuck in their house with like not even TVs,
Right.
like, so I'm like, we've got this resiliency that they had. We have the ability, we can call on them during this time to go, like, how did you guys get through this? We talk about this lack of connection. They didn't even have telephones, like it's just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I love from Daniel's courses is that he talks about, like, we are actually more like we have this support network, like the support team that's really available to us, but we and when I say we, I mean a lot of European descendants. Other cultures still have ancestral tending and ancestral connection rituals. They know how to connect with their ancestors. Like on the movie Coco, like the Mexican people, they know how to connect with their ancestors. But many of the European descendants we've been cut off from our ancestors for probably at least 1,000 years for most of us, if not 2,000 years since pre-Christianity. And I think there's are exceptions to that. But yeah, we've forgotten how to be well connected with our ancestors and allow them to come in and guide us and guard us. In fact, a lot of them probably are. I feel like in this course I'm learning how to connect with my ancestors, and one of them, I like recognize her, and she's probably been around. She's like, I don't know, Nordic or something. But I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were my ancestor, like I didn't know that we were related, but I kind of have felt like she's been a guide for a long time. So I think we are guided. We just don't know their faces. We don't know them. And we don't have any framework or any rituals or any ceremonies or whatever practices, I should say. We don't have any practices to connect with them, unless we learn from other cultures, you know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. Anyway,
Awesome.
there's so many cool things to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Yeah, so, sorry, what because I feel like I kind of went off track there with this whole ancestral stuff, but I just find it so absolutely fascinating. And even as we talk about it, the amount of heat that comes in as soon as I say ancestors, they're like, we're here, you know, we're
I
here to
feel like
come.
I feel like it's so important. I honestly feel like it's like really important for us right now to call on. In fact, Daniel even said, Dr. Daniel Four, he said like our ancestors, like stuff is coming and you really need us. And I don't think that should be like a fear thing, because I think it can be a really like there's some really big opportunities that are coming and some really big shifting and changing. Which has both sides, scary parts, because we know that when you expand, there's fear because
Yeah.
it takes us out of our old selves, right? So there's the fear, but then there's the amazing expansion happening. And our ancestors are like, we are like on call. Like, can you please like let us in on this, you know? Like call us in, let's connect, like let's be like a team here, you know, because this we are carrying on what they put foundation down for, you know. And so anyway, I think that's why it's coming up, even though it feels like a tangent, but I think it's so important, you know. I love that more people are able to connect to their ancestors and find practices and believe that somebody is there helping us on the other side that we can't see, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel really passionate about it. At some point I want to help people with it, but I'm just learning myself right now, you know. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that you feel passionate about that, and I guess that takes us back to the whole spark thing, right? Is because to
right.
me, it's about following those passions, even when those passions are so kind of scattered all over the place, or
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense why you would have this passion, but it just makes you feel good. So
Yeah. And that's like one of the things like at the beginning of this year, I'm like, hey, what am I going to do? You know, like, what am I going to do to help the world and everything? And I just kept feeling like, just do what you're excited about. And that I really feel
yes.
like that's what is actually going to lead us to what, you know, what our offerings are going to be and what is going to be really fulfilling. It's like, what am I excited about in this moment? And it was that class, it was that ancestor class. So like that's it, that's what I feel inspired to do right now. So like offering more sessions or doing online classes or whatever, like none of that, like I just need to follow what's inspiring for me. But I remember like, I mean, you know, years ago I was like super interested in like, I don't know, like cemeteries and like, I don't know, going to places where there was like, I love museums. On the way here, we passed so many museums and we just didn't have time to stop. And I was like, I really want to go to museums. I'm just like such a nerd, you know, but I'm realizing, oh, this is all like coming, like all the things I've been interested in. And then it comes together with this ancestor bit of like, yeah, the past does have a lot to teach us. The people want to connect with us, you know? And anyway, so yeah, definitely like follow those sparks, even if they seem random, like cemeteries, what? That doesn't make any sense, you know, but
I
it's
totally
like,
get that. When we went to New York, we were driving past, we were speeding past a cemetery in a New York taxi cab. And I was like, oh, do we have time to stop? I would love to go into that. And my husband was like, seriously, you're in New York? And that's what you want to see as a cemetery? But yeah, I'm not weirdo. So
you heard the Sarah Bareilles song about the cemetery in New York?
I don't think I know that one.
You'll
No.
have to listen to that. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Another tangent. It's a good song. It's one of my favorites. But all the lessons she learned in the cemetery in New York. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay, awesome. I look forward to listening to that. Now, one question I ask all of the speakers that come on here is if you could share any piece of wisdom with the world right now, what would you want the world to know?
Hmm. Um, I think that like what what you want also wants you. I didn't make that up. Somebody else did, and I don't know how. I don't know who it was. But basically, what you are moving towards or wanting to experience is also calling you towards it, because it will, you know, it will lead you to discover things about yourself you didn't even know. You're going to learn more about yourself than you ever knew. And so really to trust that, and there's like got to be like a little, this is what I think Jesus was talking about when he's like, it needs to be like as like this grain, like mustard seed or whatever, like that mustard seed.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
even if you just want to believe that you can have what you want. It's like it. That's all you need. And say, just help me to clear what I need to clear in order to experience what I want to experience. Like that's all. So I think that's what I would probably like impart if I could, would be just like what you want is good, and it's amazing, and it's like it will lead you down a magical life. Like that's why I said that in the thing, like magical and epic. Like you have a magical epic life ahead of you, that you can create, and so just want that, and just be okay wanting that, and then resources will show up, and people will show up to help clear the things that are in the way, and it'll just all unfold. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight, Megan. It's been absolutely awesome. And lots of people are loving what you just said about what you want wants you back. Like, that's beautiful. If anybody is wanting to connect with Megan, you can find her on Facebook at Megan Burnside, drum maker. And is that correct? I can't
Drum
even find.
artist.
What's that?
Megan Burnside, drum artist.
Drum artist. Thank you. Thank you. My apologies for that. And I will get that into the comments for you guys now as well. And honestly, check out her drums because they are absolutely gorgeous. So thank you so much, Megan. And I look forward to seeing all of you again on Sunday morning. We start the Spirit Says Sundays. And then next Tuesday, we will be back with another In the Spotlight. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.